Okay, Ed, I think we're recording this time, and I apologize for the background in my area over here, but I thought I had a campaign logo going on and it came out all wrong, so that shows. So I've got to just kind of soothe people by showing that in the background in the meantime. So this is going to be the first of my video podcast I'm going to try to do here with people from around the state, and today we have Ed Sandoval, who's going to introduce himself in a few and tell you all more about him. But as you all know, April starts. April voting is a voting period for the State Bar President-elect race, and it's going to go up to May 29th. It's going to be online only this time, so you make sure you do that voting. Just a quick reminder about that. But let's go ahead. Ed, do you want to introduce yourself, man, and who you are, where you're from?
My name is Adrian Sandoval. I'm the I'm the administrative first assistant district attorney for Cameron County. I am from Lyford, Texas. I'm a graduate of the University of Texas Pan American. That's where I earned my bachelor's degree, and I have a law degree from the University of Texas.
And again, where you're from, what is like the county and the area, so people kind of get outside of the valley to know where you're from, how big of a city it is, if anything.
Well, I practice primarily in Brownsville, which is the county seat of Cameron County. We're the 13th biggest jurisdiction in Texas. We have about maybe between 500 and 600,000 people in Cameron. I was raised and live in Willacy County, which is one of the smaller jurisdictions. I think there's maybe 15,000 people that live in town. I mean, in the county, maybe less. There's probably more cows than people. But yeah, it's a very rural place.
Yeah, I was just kind of mentioning that, just how small of a place it is from one county to another. And Willacy is kind of considered part of the Rio Grande Valley grouping at times too. So it's always interesting to have that fourth small county there.
I think maybe 10 lawyers. There's maybe 10 lawyers that live in the county.
Yeah, we have a pro se or pro bono clinic over there we try to start up, and I think we have tapped those 10 lawyers as often as we can. So you mentioned UTPA. People that might look up out there, because I'm also a UTPA graduate, it doesn't exist anymore, right? It's now a new entity.
No, a few years ago, the university was merged, or there was an act that created the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. So what used to be the University of Texas at Brownsville and University of Texas Pan American and the Health Science Center in Harlingen all became UTRGV. So we're considered legacy alumni of the institution.
And I think it's considered a new university altogether. I mean, it is a massive expansion. I mean, even the old camp, the UTPA campus, the original one, is like unrecognizable. There's no green space. It's amazing. So welcome, fellow Bronc. I'm going to say that. I'm not going to go to it's Vaquero now, I believe. So I asked you, you know, there are many reasons that I asked you to kind of be part of this video podcast, if you will. But one of them is the fact that there's a certain program in place called the Law School Preparation Institute. It started at UTEP that you took a part of. I think one of the first ones at UTPA. And that one, if you can describe it a little bit what it is, and then I'll kind of mention a little bit background about it, how it relates to my time when I was in law school. What exactly is the LISP?
So I think LISP in itself was started in response to Hopwood and the push to allow folks from underserved areas to gain admission into prestigious law schools. There was a concern that many of us were first-time or students serviced by UTPA were either first-generation lawyers or first-generation college graduates, and even the first-generation high school graduates. And then we didn't have the support structure in where to prepare someone for law school. What the Law School Preparation Institute, which goes by LISP, does is provides us a summer-long immersion program into what you need to do to prepare for law school, not just the law school admissions exam, but law school itself, and then changing your mindset from the instructional method from what you'll see in high school and college being the lecture to the Socratic method, and the rigors of the writing requirements that come with law school. So I think it may have been harder than some classes I took in law school, but I would say that it prepared me for what I saw when I was a student at UT.
And you mentioned UT Law. I mean, that's one of the top 15, 20 law schools in the nation, from what I understand, right? Of course, my wife went to that school. I didn't. I couldn't get in there. So actually, I never tried. I went outside of the state. But interestingly enough, when you mentioned the Hopwood decision, it's a Fifth Circuit decision that took considerations of race away from admissions to law schools. I came down like 95 or so, and I was actually in law school when that happened. So I remember hearing about that. For someone we know have in common, my mentor and my pre-law advisor, Dr. Jerry Palmer, who is recently retired. And I was surprised about it, but I was very happy to see how they instituted this very successful LISP program. And it's still sort of surviving and chugging along, even though it's limited resources, from what I understand.
Yes.
Yeah. And every summer they visited certain offices. And as you know now, they come to TRLA or Texas Organic Legal Aid every summer. I think, did you ever come as a LISP student to our office?
Yes, in 2005, the summer of 2005 was when I was a LISP student. We visited the Edinburgh office of TRLA before the expansion and before I think it was under construction at the time. And as a student, we went to hear about the programs that TRLA offered, some of the advantages that came with being a public service or public interest lawyer, and hear about the other kind of career pathways that exist for attorneys outside of like the quote unquote big firm corporate track that some folks kind of find themselves on.
And we actually do that for people who don't know that we do that every year for the LISP students. And I think in the past few years, I know I called you and you're always there, man. You come from, no matter where you're from, you've been at trial, you've been beyond trial, and you come over, and I think students like to hear that perspective. Because I mean, for me, 97 is when I graduated. So law school was a whole different ball of wax than what it is for you and then for other people. But I guess it might have made quite an impression on you, because what did you do after law school?
Well, after I graduated from law school, I joined TRLA. I joined the migrant farm worker team and the landlord tenant team, and I was housed in the Westaco office of TRLA. I found myself suing multinational agricultural firms and kind of going after very bad landlords that were doing bad things to people. It was an enriching experience. I appreciate my time at TRLA, and I learned a lot. I was able to work with a lot of amazing attorneys at the time, including your wife, and it made an impact on me that I think is made me a better lawyer.
Yeah, no, she is. I told people the smartest person in the room when I'm in there with her, man. She is something else. Oh, there she is in the background, by the way. You just were my production level here, Lindley. Thank you. Yeah, this is not a studio, by the way. It's my dining room, and she just heard it from the other dining room. We split up the houses in 4 different segments: one for a classroom for a little one, another one for a classroom for the older one, and then 2 work areas. And so this is my West Wing. I can't believe she interrupted this. But anyway. But yeah, no, she's happy to hear those things, and I'm happy to hear that it was an enriching experience for you. And you left Trala then for a while, right, and worked in the private segment for a while, but then came back, I guess, to public service in a sense.
Yes. Yeah, my current elected official was elected to become the district attorney for a second time in 2013, and I joined a few months after he took office. I was a line prosecutor or line ADA for a while, and then about 5 or 6 years ago, I was promoted to be the first assistant. And since then, I've been helping him manage the office and tackling the projects that he asked me to take care of.
You all came in at an interesting time too. I got to tell people about this because you always hear about the negative aspects of it. When I was in the Commission for Lawyer Discipline, you need to get that.
Say again?
You need to get that call. I saw
no, I'm muting it.
Yeah. When I started the Commission for Lawyer Discipline, the case that was happening there in Cameron County concerning your all's predecessor was taking place. And basically, your predecessor, the district attorney, was prosecuted, I think, for kickbacks, along with other people there and judges and private practitioners, correct?
Yes, it was an interesting time, I think, for our bar. The trial actually happened when I was a first-year ADA with the office, and it was kind of awkward because the former district attorney was still practicing law, and I actually did litigate some cases against him while he was awaiting his sentencing. But an effort undertaken by my elected for Mr. Sines was to restore a sense of trust in our office, and it took a lot to do that. I mean, I had spoken to some police officers who had never stepped foot in the office because it was not a place that they felt welcome. We had to kind of restore their faith in us as their partners in an effort to protect the community. We had to restore the community's faith in government in general. And it's been a difficult path. And we've had to facilitate the prosecution of a lot of local officials. And we've been successful in prosecuting some of them and not so successful in others. but Mr. Science has been dedicated to holding those. There is no one above the law. There were no one beneath it. It doesn't matter what your last name is or the title that you may have after your name. If someone does something wrong, they need to be held accountable. And these past 7-8 years have been interesting and fun because we're doing the right thing, and it's satisfying when you do the right thing, and it's hard, but it's enriching.
You said 7 or 8 years, so that implies that your boss has been reelected, not just after one time, right?
Yeah. So
is he appointed by the commissioner's court? Is that what it was first, or how was it?
No. The previous district attorney did not run for reelection. He ran for Congress, so it was an open seat 8 years ago, or 7-8 years ago. 4 years ago, he was reelected, and then most recently, he did not have an opponent. So we will have another term of a third term at doing what we do.
And I wanted to highlight because I mean, like I told you, the Commission for Lawyer Discipline when I was there, and it's the 6 years, and they started with this case in Cameron County, and it basically ended with our case in Alva County and Rio Delgado. And you'd hear about it. But I mean, there's practitioners like you and me, like 90-some% of us, who are kind of making days, trying to make ends meet, and we are not giving certain credit. And I want to give your department and your boss, the credit that y'all came in to clean up the place and gain some trust, like you said. And you said it has been, and I'm sure it's been difficult, but I visited your office a few weeks ago. It's vibrant, man. I mean, you have a very energetic, strong group of ADAs. Did you take part of that hiring?
Mostly, some of the senior staff predate me, but I've been helping Mr. Sines build his office. I think we have about 35 or 36 folks on staff right now, and we do our best to recruit people that represent our community. Mr. Sines is dedicated to ensuring that the people that serve Cameron County represent the people of Cameron County. So we have folks of all different shades and variety that work here and different types of religious and orientations, because we can't successfully represent our community and we can't successfully understand them unless the people who work here look like them and think like them. But it's been difficult, and it's been difficult to hire people. And being a public service entity, it's difficult to keep people because at any given day, one of the ADAs can walk across the street and double their salary. But we've been able to find some folks that are dedicated to seeking justice, and it's been great.
Across the street at the federal courthouse?
Well, whether to go down the street to the U.S. Attorney's office or to hang out their own shingle.
I heard that actually from the El Paso County Attorney's office, and I think the DA's office, that it's a higher turnover rate. It's very difficult to keep people because of what you said. They're coming out of law school a few years, but when the law school loans come in, I mean, family starts kind of, being part of the picture. It's difficult. Do you have that same problem with turnover rate?
Yes, we do. I mean, it's very difficult to compete when we're offering a first-year lawyer $54,000 or $53,000, and then when after 2 or 3 years experience, they can double or triple that by being in the private practice. It's very hard.
I'm imagining that's the case for most places. I mean, it's difficult for you all, but yeah, I remember talking to them and talking to you about that. I think the state bar can probably play a good role in retention of that by offering you affordable services and like a tailored COA that can happen locally so that your folks don't have to travel out somewhere and save you all some money and put that towards salaries and otherwise. I want to say this now. I am at shelter in place here at this point. I am at, we don't go to our office. I'm not at the beach. Let me tell you that right now, unlike other people out there. This is just a background, but you're actually considered an essential employee, right? And you are at work. Are you showing up every day?
Yes, myself and the elected official, Mr. Sines, are here every day. We have a staff of about 110 people, but we are rotating folks. We have we have about 20 folks in the offices, and I say offices because we have more than one place, but those who aren't here are working from home, but we need to continue to administer justice. The grand jury met earlier this week. Cases are continuing to be filed. We're trying to do our best to make sure the jail does not become overpopulated and trying to get violent offenders out of custody. We have a public health crisis, and people need to stay home and not be out in public, but crime doesn't stop. And people who take advantage of the weak and prey on the innocent know that this is happening, and unfortunately they're doing bad things, and that causes the cycle, the criminal justice cycle, to start. And we have to ensure that people's rights are respected, and that the system works, and that calls for us to be here. And tangentially, because of that, we've had to respond to issues that are coming with any type of crisis. And we've seen statewide issues related to price gouging, and statewide issues related to people not following the orders of public health. And it falls on the prosecutors to help through Texas Attorney General's office and going after folks who are taking advantage of the crisis through price gouging, and helping our public health authorities in enforcing the public health orders. It's been an interesting time, and there hasn't been really a guide on what to do, and the prosecutors are talking amongst themselves. We were on a conference call with a lot of the elected officials earlier this week about what we're doing in responding as local prosecutors, and we are on conference calls throughout the day with our local elected officials on what we can do to respond. It's an interesting time, but we have to be here because the continuity of government has to exist. The most essential part of government is our local government, and our local government cannot stop working.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So that's what we're dedicated to doing. We need to ensure that services are continuing to be offered, not just on the criminal justice side, but from all part of local government. Because if that breaks down, then civil society can actually be put at risk.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I never thought about that. And last night when I picked up dinner kind of late at night, before the curfew starts here, to give people a perspective, with the 27th of March there on a Friday, shelter in place has been in order in your county for about a week or over that. Ours just started, I think, today, right, or this morning in Hidalgo County. But when I went to go get dinner last night, I saw police officers out and about. Like everywhere. And I thought, yeah, of course, they're going to have to be doing that. And I never even thought about how much we depend on them during these periods, right? Even though we think, I heard some people arguing about why are we paying taxes or appraisal districts coming around appraising areas. Like, because schools are still serving lunches, police are still out there, prosecutors are still prosecuting, and we just take it for granted. So, thank you for, I didn't even think about all the stuff that you're doing right now, having to enforce, and make sure the rule of law is followed. And so let me go back a little bit and ask you about just the mechanics. The grand jury impanelment, how do you all do it for the 6 feet apart, no more than 10 people in a room?
We didn't use the grand jury room. We moved to one of the big courtrooms and had people spaced out to where they could sit and not be within 6 feet of someone else. And then our prosecutor and the witnesses were far enough away to where they could be there, answer questions that they had, and present without them being close enough to violate the social distancing requirements. The grand jury, members of the grand jury are considered public officials for the purpose of their time on the grand jury, so that they qualify as essential government personnel for the carrying out of their duties. So they're able to come to the courthouse and hold their session. We're contemplating, if things continue, we may have to extend the grand jury. That means not impanel another one, because it'd be difficult to have 400 people come and sit in a place for us to pick some folks. But the system's got to work. Yes, some offices are entertaining asking courts to suspend the 90-day requirement. If you're arrested in Texas, you have 90 days to be indicted upon or entitled to a reduction of your bond. Some jurisdictions are asking courts to suspend that in a case-by-case basis. That's something that we can entertain, but so long as the grand jury can meet, we're going to ask them to continue to meet, because those folks that are in custody, they're just accused of a crime. They have not been found guilty, and we should be able to respect their rights and have the system move forward. We have technology that's available to us to where we can continue to meet and hold hearings and do everything but a jury trial. And we're going to do our best to work with the courts and the defense attorneys and everybody that's involved in the system to make sure that we can continue to make things move forward.
I think you do know that I'm a member of the local council of governments, a committee of that, and that's a criminal justice action committee that reviews grants, for prosecution, protection of domestic violence victims. Otherwise, you've got a grant writer there who comes in, and several of them, I guess, and applies. And you all are very proactive about grants and technology and advancement. I've seen that in the past few years, and bringing in time, not just to the cameras, for the police officers, for their cars, but also for prosecutors. So I'm assuming because of that, like technology, you're allowed to prosecute some of these cases and not have to be in the courtroom, or do you all actually have to go into the courtroom?
My boss has made a directive that we're not to be in any courtroom with anybody, and limit our appearance. Because of the grants that we've secured and some assistance that we received from entities, we've been able to equip all of our ADAs with a laptop with a camera in it. So, for example, our goal is next week to appear at it. So normally we appear at every jail setting. So if someone's arrested tonight, or if someone's arrested Sunday night, Monday morning, there would be an ADA there to talk with the defense attorney about how to set bond reasonably. We can't be in the room because right now because there's just too many people and there's a risk of spreading infection. So our goal is that starting next week, we'll be able to appear via Zoom for those initial appearances and make the recommendations. And the lawyers do not have to be in the office to do it because of the technology that we have. They can be at home. They can log on their computer and they can do exactly this. They can listen to the judge, give the admonishments, give their recommendations on reasonable bond, do our best to get people out of jail if we can. That said, there's some violent offenders that are committing some bad acts and they should be detained before their trials are had because they're dangerous individuals. And we're trying to have an informed case-by-case analysis to ensure that the public continues to be safe.
You know, it took me a while to realize why the orders are set in place about essential, non-essential, and even how essential orders are in place of who can show up at the courthouse, that there's still a limit of people in the courtroom. But you just described a scenario. For example, I'm thinking, if we've got a criminal defendant, just one in the courtroom, their defense counsel, yours, the prosecutor, the judge, the court reporter, the bailiff. That's like 6 people right there, right? Probation officer, 7.
Translator, 8.
Who's this?
The translators.
Translators, the sheriff's office, they brought him in, that's 9. I mean, yeah, you're already pushing to 10. That's what you can't, on a one defendant, you can't have that kind of a, and I never thought about that. I mean, in order to continue the due process being respected, you can do that. That's amazing. How long did Joel sit down and discuss this through one day, or have you learned it as you go, or how did you and your boss deal with this?
So kudos to the local judges. We're fortunate enough to have Judge Sheila Bentz on the bench of our probate court. She had already taken the lead in using Zoom for the mental health hearings, so the doctors wouldn't have to appear. They could appear through video conferencing. With her guidance, the other courts are very easily able to transition to using it. And she's been working with our county, district, and associate courts to try to get there. As for the magistrate court, our individual magistrate judges have taken the lead on making sure that they're complying with social distancing and making sure that we can ensure that criminal justice system works while trying to the best protect the community.
That's amazing. Yeah, when I called you, I thought, it'd be great to have a little background and talk about LISP and our UTPA and your UT law experience, but this is a whole other perspective I never even thought about that I'm sure people out there would appreciate listening to. For those of us that are just, shelter at home and meet our clients and have to go into court, never realizing what's going on when there's something important. And I would love to continue this, but you're doing great work there. I don't want to take up more of your valuable time. My own shelter at home is breaking down here. I've got the homeschoolers about calling up here now, coming into my room along with a couple of dogs that I got to take care of. So before it gets crazy here, man, I want to thank you not only for being there, being a friend, being a supporter through all of this, but for what you're doing right now with you and your boss. Thank you.
Well, and you're welcome. And I want to give kudos to all the other. It's just not the prosecutors, the judges' offices, the county administrators, even all the way down. I mean, everybody in any type of county or local government, they're working their butts off to make sure that our communities stay safe. We're fortunate to have very strong county governments in Texas, and they're doing their best, and we're continuing to communicate with one another to make sure that we can be on the front of this. Bad things are going to happen. It's unfortunate, but we can mitigate it. And if we all continue to work together, we can make it happen.
Hey, thank you again for all that, man. I really appreciate this. I'll give you a link as soon as I'm done here. And don't forget to vote, man, starting on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm voting for you, and I'm encouraging anybody and everybody I can talk to vote for you. I think you are a testament to what a Texas lawyer should be. You've dedicated your career to serving our community. You sincerely care about the development of young lawyers and the success of lawyers in general. And I think both the state of Texas and the state bar are going to benefit by you being our next president.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And I want to thank you for giving me again the opportunity to visit with you and your boss, because I think I told you that shortly thereafter, my own prosecutor, Ricardo Rodriguez, said, I'm going to come into my office. So I did, so it kind of led a domino effect. The next thing you know, I was visiting El Paso prosecutor. Thank you again for everything and for your support.
Always have to oblige.
Take it easy, man.
Take care.